They said she didn't belong here. They said the battlefield wasn't for women, and when she wore that badge on her chest, they laughed. "This isn't a kitchen," one soldier joked. "This is war." But she didn't reply. She just smiled, a quiet, sharp smile that hid years of pain, practice, and patience. Her name? Lieutenant Aria Kane, a name that would soon echo through every radio on the front line. It all started in a wind-swept mountain valley, where the sound of gunfire never truly stopped. Aria had been sent there as an intelligence officer, not a sniper, not a shooter, just an observer. At least that's what the commanders said. Her task was simple: watch, report, survive. But for Aria, watching wasn't enough. She had trained for years, long nights at the academy, fighting for respect, learning ballistics, wind, range, things most thought she'd never use, because in their eyes, she was just another woman with a badge. One morning, during a tense standoff near Ridge 17, her team was pinned down. The enemy had the higher ground. Bullets rained down like iron rain. The sniper team was down, their best marksman gone. Communication lines jammed. No support. No backup. They were stuck. The commander yelled, "We need eyes on that ridge. Someone take the scope." Silence. No one moved. Then Aria stepped forward. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice calm. "I'll take the shot." Everyone turned. Someone laughed. "You? You're intel." Not a shooter. But Aria didn't argue. She picked up the fallen sniper's rifle, a massive M200 intervention. It felt heavy, but familiar. She had trained with one years ago, quietly, secretly, just in case she ever needed it. The storm clouds rolled in. Wind howled. Visibility dropped. Perfect conditions for a sniper, if you knew how to trust the chaos. Aria crawled to the ridge, mud soaking her uniform. She steadied the rifle. Her heartbeat slowed. She calculated. Wind 26 miles mine crosswind. Range 2,950 meters. Target, enemy spotter. A shot no one had ever made in live combat. Behind her, someone whispered, "She's wasting time." But Aria heard nothing. The world went silent. She focused through the scope. Her finger brushed the trigger. Then, a deep breath, she fired. The recoil slammed her shoulder. For a moment, nothing. Then, a single figure on the ridge collapsed. The enemy went quiet. Someone gasped, "Did she?" The radio crackled. Target neutralized. Aria exhaled. Her hands steady, her eyes cold. No celebration, no smile. Just focus, because she knew this was only the beginning. That one shot changed everything. The mocking laughter was gone. The jokes died in the storm, but in the shadows word spread fast. The intel girl made the 3,000-meter shot. At HQ, commanders didn't believe it. They demanded proof. Video logs, wind data, coordinates, everything checked out. And yet some still whispered, "Lucky shot. Beginner's luck." Aria heard them. But she didn't care. She wasn't here for fame. She was here for her fallen brothers, the ones who never got the chance to fire back. That night she sat alone near the base camp fire. Rain tapped her helmet. Her rifle rested beside her, silent, cold, and loyal. She thought of home, of her father, a veteran sniper. He used to tell her, "People will doubt your strength until they depend on it." She finally understood what he meant. Tomorrow would bring another battle. Another chance to prove that courage has no gender. Only aim. The sun never really rose in that valley. It just glowed, weak, pale, and cold. Smoke from the night's shelling still hung in the air. The war had paused, but only on the surface. Deep inside the mountains, the enemy was regrouping, and so was Aria. After that impossible 3,000-meter shot, she had become something else, a symbol. But not everyone liked that. When she entered the command tent that morning, the air went heavy. Men saluted half-heartedly. Whispers followed her every step. "She just got lucky," someone muttered. "She's no real sniper." Aria didn't look back. She'd heard worse. The badge on her chest was still shining, but she knew it meant nothing if she couldn't keep proving herself. Colonel Briggs, her commanding officer, stood by the map. He turned slowly as she entered. "Lieutenant Kane," he said, "you made history last night." She nodded silently. "Good," the colonel continued. Because history just gave us a problem. He pointed to a red circle on the map. Ridge 21, enemy radio tower. They're using it to jam our signals. We need it gone. Arya's eyes narrowed. How far? 3,200 meters, he said. The room went silent. Someone scoffed. She can't do that again. Not twice. Arya didn't flinch. I'll go. Hours later, she was out in the cold again. The valley stretched endlessly, wind cutting through her gloves, snow crunching beneath her boots. Her partner, Sergeant Miller, walked beside her. He was quiet, the kind of soldier who trusted results, not words. You really think you can hit that tower from here? He asked. Arya adjusted her rifle strap. I don't think, she said. I calculate, Miller grinned slightly. That's what scares them. They set up position near a rocky cliff. The enemy tower flickered in the distance, barely visible through fog and drifting snow. She unpacked the rifle, checked the scope, cleaned the lens with precision. Every motion was calm, measured, deadly. Hours passed. Wind shifted. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Miller checked his watch. We're running out of light. Light's not the problem, Arya whispered. It's patience. Through her scope, she could barely make out the shapes moving near the tower, guards pacing back and forth. Every now and then, a flash of light from their radios gave her a clue to their pattern. Then suddenly, a burst of static in her earpiece. Miller frowned. HQ's trying to reach us. Jammer's stronger than we thought. Arya's jaw tightened. Then we end it now. She took one deep breath. Wind direction, southwest, 24 miles. Temperature, dropping fast. Target distance, 3,205 meters. Elevation difference, 170 feet. She adjusted her scope by instinct, her fingers remembering every formula she'd ever learned. On your mark, Miller whispered. But she didn't wait. She felt the wind, the heartbeat of the earth beneath her, the pulse of the storm around her. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet tore through the wind, a scream no one could hear. Seconds stretched into eternity, then impact. The tower burst into flame. The valley lit up. Static vanished from the radios. Direct hit, Miller shouted. HQ confirmed it seconds later. Signal restored. Back at camp, soldiers gathered around her like she was a ghost. Some still doubted her. Others finally saw the truth. A man approached her, the same one who mocked her badge days ago. He stared for a long time before saying, "You just saved every one of us." She nodded quietly. "It's not about saving," she said softly. "It's about surviving, with purpose." That night, as the storm cleared, she sat outside her tent. The stars peeked through the clouds. Her rifle rested across her knees. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. Miller joined her, handing over a steaming mug of coffee. He smiled. "So, what now, Lieutenant?" Arya looked at the distant ridges, still glowing with faint firelight. "Now," she said, "we prepare for what's coming next. Because they'll come for us harder." Miller nodded slowly. "And when they do?" Her eyes met his. "Then I'll remind them again. Why they should never have mocked my badge." But in the shadows of the mountains, someone was watching. A drone camera, enemy recon, recording every move she made. The footage would soon reach the enemy commander. And for the first time, they'd know her name too. Lieutenant Arya Kane, the sniper who could shoot through storms. And now, she was on their target list. The valley slept under a thick layer of fog. But in war, even silence feels dangerous. Every soldier knew it. Calm never lasted, especially after what Arya Kane had done. Her 3,200-meter shot hadn't just destroyed a radio tower. It had humiliated the enemy commander, Colonel Voren, a man known for cruelty, a man who never forgave being embarrassed. 3 days after the explosion, Arya and her unit were ordered to move deeper into enemy territory. Their mission: gather intel, hold position, and avoid detection. Simple on paper, deadly in reality. Arya packed her rifle carefully, checked every screw, every bullet, every lens. She wasn't superstitious, but she whispered a quiet promise to her weapon. "We'll make it through this." Miller, her partner, laughed softly. "Talking to your gun now?" She smiled faintly. "It listens better than most people." They trekked for hours through frozen passes, snow biting their faces, the wind screaming like a living thing. By nightfall, they reached an abandoned village. Shattered walls, burned roofs, silence, the perfect place to hide, or to die. The team set up camp in the ruins of an old church. Arya took the highest point, the bell tower. From there she could see miles of nothingness. But she felt something. That strange heaviness in the air, the kind that tells you someone's watching. Far away in a dark enemy base, Colonel Voren stood before a flickering screen. On it, Arya's face, frozen from drone footage. "Who is she?" he growled. "Lieutenant Arya Kane, sir," an officer answered. "Sniper, Intel Division. Allied Forces." Voren's eyes narrowed. "Intel? That's not a sniper. That's a problem." He turned away slowly. "Put a bounty on her. I want her alive. Or what's left of her." Back in the valley, Arya woke to the sound of distant thunder. Except it wasn't thunder. It was mortar fire. The village shook. Walls cracked. Men shouted, "Ambush!" Miller dragged her down the stairs as explosions ripped through the ruins. The enemy had found them. Fast, precise, and angry. How did they know their position? Only one answer made sense, and they were being tracked. "Arya!" Miller shouted over the chaos. "They're flanking from the east." She grabbed her rifle, crawled behind a broken window, and peered through the scope. Dozens of figures moved in the fog. Shadows, quick and silent. Professional. These weren't random soldiers. They were hunters. And she was the prey. Her pulse slowed. She aimed at the first silhouette. Crack one down. Another moved. Crack. Gone. But they kept coming. "Fall back," the commander yelled. "We're surrounded." Amid the chaos, Arya spotted a glint of metal. A drone hovering high, watching everything. That's how they found us, she thought. Without hesitation, she shifted aim. Crack! The drone exploded in a burst of light. For a brief moment, the battlefield went blind. She turned to Miller. "Now move." They sprinted through collapsing walls, dust choking the air. Guns firing behind them. By the time they reached the tree line, half their team was gone. Arya stopped, gasping. Covered in dirt and blood. Not all of it hers. Miller leaned against a tree, clutching his arm. "They knew we were here, Arya. Someone leaked our position." She looked back at the smoke rising from the village. Her heart sank. "Not leaked," she said. "Hunted." That night they hid in a narrow cave. The only light came from a dying flare. Miller dozed off, exhausted. But Arya couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces, her fallen team, their laughter, their trust, and the mocking voice in her head. "You're not a real soldier." She clenched her fists. Her badge pressed into her palm. She whispered, "Then I'll show you what real looks like." The next morning, they intercepted enemy radio chatter. A message repeated over and over. Target female sniper. Codename, Ghost. Bounty, triple reward. Miller's eyes widened. "They're talking about you." Arya stayed calm. "Then they'll find me ready." She loaded her rifle. Her movements precise, controlled. Miller looked at her, confused. "You plan to fight them all?" She met his eyes. "I don't plan to run." By midday, enemy patrols were moving closer to the ridge where they hid. Their drones scanned the forest. Their dogs barked through the snow. Arya climbed higher, to a vantage point only a sniper would find. She wrapped herself in a camo sheet, face smeared with dirt, breath steady. Through her scope, she counted them, 12 men, 1 officer. Moving in a loose formation. Perfect. She aimed for the officer first. Crack, he dropped, panic spread instantly. Soldiers dove for cover. Arya shifted aim, crack, 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 3 more fell. The forest echoed with fear. Miller's voice crackled through the radio. "Arya, they're retreating." She didn't reply. Her eyes were cold, focused. "They'll be back," she whispered. By sunset, the snow had turned red. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what she had done. She looked at the bodies in the distance. Each shot precise, each one necessary. This wasn't pride. It was survival. And it came with a price. Miller sat beside her, quiet for a while. Then he said softly, "They're never going to stop, are they?" Arya shook her head. "No. Not until I stop them first." Far away, Colonel Voren stared at the new report. 10 men lost. Drone destroyed. Mission failed. His jaw tightened. He slammed the file shut. "Then I'll go myself," he growled. The room went silent. No one dared to speak. The war had become personal. And in the mountains, Arya Kane didn't know it yet, but the hunter was now coming for her. Not a drone. Not soldiers, him. That night, the wind howled again. The storm returned, angrier than before. Arya cleaned her rifle one last time, eyes fixed on the horizon. Something deep inside her whispered, "This isn't over." She closed her eyes. For the first time she prayed, not for herself, but for the strength to face what was coming. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't against the enemy, but against what war turns you into. The storm had not stopped for 2 days. Rain poured like the sky itself was grieving. Thunder rolled through the mountains, shaking the earth beneath every step. Inside a small mountain hut, Arya Kane sat alone, sharpening a single bullet. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to survive this long. But she had. Through fire, through loss, through betrayal, and now, she knew the end was coming. Miller's voice echoed in her ear through the headset. "Arya's command says extraction in 48 hours. You just have to stay hidden." She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were locked on the valley below. Enemy camps, drones circling, and one large tent in the center. She had seen that tent before. That was where he was. Colonel Voren, the man who had hunted her team, who had ordered the ambush that killed her brothers, the man who laughed when she was called just a girl with a badge. "Arya, do you copy?" Miller's voice came again. This time she replied softly, "I copy, but I'm not leaving yet." Miller froze. "What, Arya? No, your orders are to extract." She smiled bitterly. "You heard what they said, Miller. This war doesn't end until I'm gone. Or he is." Static filled the radio, then silence. Arya loaded her last 5 bullets, each one carved with a mark, a memory of the fallen. By nightfall, the storm became a monster. Lightning flashed, turning the valley into a world of silver and shadow. Arya climbed to the ridge, mud gripping her boots, wind slicing across her face. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, but her purpose was louder. She reached the top, set up her tripod, and unfolded her sniper. Through the scope, she saw the camp glowing with floodlights, dozens of guards, tents swaying in the storm. And then she saw him. Colonel Voren, standing tall beneath a tarpaulin, barking orders, his coat flapping like the wings of a crow. Her heart tightened. The man responsible for everything. She took a deep breath, steadied her scope, and whispered, "For my team." Her finger brushed the trigger, then crack. The rifle thundered. The sound vanished in the roar of rain. The bullet flew, cutting through storm and wind. A perfect arc through chaos, but the lightning flashed again. And at the last second, Voren turned. The shot missed by inches, shattering a radio beside him. The camp erupted in panic. "Sniper! Sniper in the hills!" Spotlights swung toward her ridge. The hunt was on again. Arya packed fast, rolling through the mud as bullets tore through trees. She ran between rocks, heart pounding, lungs burning. Rain blinded her, but she didn't stop. She knew one thing: they'd trace the shot. And soon the entire valley would close in. She needed higher ground. 2 hours later, she reached the cliff above the valley. Her clothes were soaked, her hands numb, but her eyes, calm, unbroken. She sat up again. This time she checked the wind carefully. Direction, pressure, distance, 1,000 meters. Almost impossible in this storm. Almost. Down below, Voren's convoy was preparing to move. He barked at his men, his face red with rage. "She dares shoot at me again?" He slammed his hand on the jeep. "Find her, now!" But Arya's scope already had him. She whispered softly, "You mocked my badge, Colonel. Now, you'll remember my name." Wind howled. Lightning lit the valley for a split second. And in that moment, Arya exhaled. Her finger squeezed the trigger. Crack! The bullet soared. Rainwater split in its wake. It traveled like fate. Unstoppable, unseen, unreal. Voren turned his head slightly, undine as if sensing something divine. And then, impact, a single sound, a single fall. The great Colonel Voren, the terror of the valley, dropped to his knees, then collapsed into the mud. Silence. Even the thunder seemed to pause. Arya lowered her rifle slowly. Her eyes stayed on the scope for a long moment. Then she whispered, "It's done." Miller's voice crackled through the radio, breathless. "Arya, did you?" She smiled faintly. "Target neutralized." Then her strength gave out. She leaned against the rock, rain washing the dirt and blood from her face. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were full. For her fallen friends. For the pain. For the silence that would follow. When dawn finally came, the valley was quiet. No gunfire, no commands, only the echo of that one shot. Arya limped down the ridge, holding her rifle like a memory. At the base, Miller was waiting, bandaged but alive. He saw her and smiled weakly. Thought you'd never make it, she grinned back. Had to finish some business. He looked past her, smoke still rising from the camp. Did you? She nodded. Yeah, he won't be coming back. Back at base, commanders surrounded her like she was a ghost. They had seen the feed. The impossible shot through the storm. One officer whispered, "That was over 3,000 meters." Another said, "Who trained you for that?" Arya glanced at her old intel badge, then back at them. "No one, I just..." Stopped listening to limits. Weeks later, the war officially ended. The enemy collapsed without their commander. Newspapers called her the ghost of the storm. Soldiers whispered her name around campfires. But Arya didn't care for fame. She visited the graves of her team, laid her rifle down beside them. Miller stood behind her, silent. "What will you do now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Maybe cook again." He laughed softly. "You the sniper who ended a war?" She looked at the horizon. "I was never supposed to be a hero, Miller. I was just supposed to serve." And with that, she turned away, leaving behind the gun, the badge, and the storm. They mocked her badge. They said she didn't belong. But when the world was drowning in fire and rain, it was her shot, her courage, that silenced the storm and ended the war. Sometimes it's not the rank that defines a hero. It's the heart behind the trigger.